In this video, I'm going to give you my final picks for UFC 290. We're going to look at value plays, cash game lineups. We're going to build tournament lineups and have some free money for you, so make sure you watch until the end. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. If you haven't already, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. That'll be linked in the description. That's a full card breakdown, but this is for our DFS heads, you DraftKings nerds, and we're going to get into it today. Now, for those of you that want a little edge on your competition, an advantage, a leg up, if you want that full training camp coming into this fight, then you can create a membership on KunithMMA.com, where I'm going to be posting official bets, as well as DraftKings strategy guides and more. Check it out. Now, we'll start with value plays. These are plays at 8,000 and below. You're going to need some of these cheaper pieces to make things work in your lineup, and there are a few spots that I like this week, starting right at the very top of that range. The boy Alonzo Menafield. Now, I picked Jimmy Crute the first time out, and we talked about this a little bit in the predictions video, but I think that Alonzo Menafield goes out there, wins this fight, and wins by knockout. He knocked Jimmy Crute down multiple times and basically was winning almost every striking exchange that they had on the feet, and I do think that he's going to be able to put him away this week because he doesn't need to land all that heavy, and I think that was his problem in the first fight. Loading up, trying to hit him with everything, but realistically, Menafield just needs to touch him because Jimmy Crute's chin, for one, is not that great, and Alonzo Menafield has real natural one-shot knockout power. So if he just puts it out there, touches him a couple of times, I think that Jimmy Crute's going to go down. He may get back up, but I think ultimately this time he's going to be able to put him away. And from a scoring perspective, a first round finish at this price point is going to be on the optimal lineup. I promise you that. You see the first round finish of Moreno, you see Craig, you see Charant. He's putting up scores of 114, 96, 98. You see 123 here, you see 103 there. This is a guy who has as much first round finishing upside as anybody on the card, and he's somebody that you should definitely have in your lineups. You're going to need one side of this matchup, whether you're on the Crute side or the Menafield side. If you're running multiple lineups, you should have exposure to both. But Alonzo Menafield is one of our better value plays of the week because of his win condition and how many points that's going to score you on DraftKings. Our next value play is at 7,500, and that's Alexandre Pantoja. He's got 5 rounds to work. He's already up 2-0 on Brandon Moreno. That's big. If history repeats itself here, Pantoja is going to win this fight. He's going to be the champion, and he's going to score you a decent amount of DraftKings points, even if it goes a little bit longer. Now, if you watch the predictions video, you know I'm on the side of Brandon Moreno. I do think it's a close fight either way, especially when you look back at the fights that they've had. I know it was a lot different. Brandon Moreno was a different fighter then, but these things happen. Even when you look at Moreno's last fight with Figueiredo, he got caught with a tight guillotine at one point, and if Pantoja is in the same situation that Figgy was in, he's finishing those. Again, I do think that Brandon Moreno wins. I think his output, I think his durability, and I think that championship experience is going to be too much for Pantoja the later that this fight goes, but at the same time, can't ignore the win condition, you can't ignore the history. And as I get older, I learn a couple of things. Like 1, the nose hair just doesn't stop growing no matter what you do. 2, sometimes your arms hurt when you sneeze. I don't know what that's all about. And then 3, you've got Pantoja here, a fighter that I don't think is going to win. Sometimes on DraftKings, you play the fighters you don't think are going to win because of how many points are going to score, and you're playing that leverage game. You don't always want to play who you think are the best guys. You play the guys who have a shot, you play the odds, you play the variance game, you try to match the chaos that is betting on MMA. So Alexandre Pantoja, 7,500, one of the better value plays that I've identified this week. Let's go. At 7,300, we have Robbie Lawler. He's going to be fighting Nico Price, and I think that Robbie Lawler can go on to win this fight. He wins by decision if he does win. He's not somebody I'm dying to put in my lineups. I think that Robbie Lawler, just with the name value, is going to be a decent underdog when it comes to ownership this week. I don't think you're getting that different or that cute or that unique by putting Robbie Lawler in your lineup. And frankly, I mean, outside of the win over Nick Diaz, you have a situation where he's not putting up crazy scores. Even back in his prime, breaking 100 points was something that didn't happen all that often. I mean, early on it was happening, but you got 95 in a win, 99, 71, 62, 90, 81, 88, 80, 78. I mean, something like 78 points in a 5-round fight is bad. You get 30 points just for winning by decision, and that means he only scored another 48 points over the 25 minutes. But a lot of that is because DraftKings scoring is skewed to wrestling. If you're not grappling, you're probably not scoring all that well if you don't find yourself finishing these fights, putting a lot of volume out there, or at least getting knockdowns. And I don't expect him to try to go to the mat with Nico Price, who's a wild man who's going to do weird, unorthodox things, especially when he's on his back in a dangerous position. So I think that Robbie Lawler is a fine play this week, but I don't think he's someone you absolutely need to get to. But it is interesting interesting for this one reason. We're on a pay-per-view card. What happens when we're on these pay-per-view cards? Well, you see these huge favorites come in. Like we see Bo Nickel now at minus 3,000. Even some of the fights on the main card, like Robert Whittaker's minus 400. You have minus 450 for Volkanovski. Tatsuro Taira coming in at minus 1,200. Same thing for Jack Della Maddelena. You get a lot of these juiced favorites on pay-per-view cards. This card is a little egregious with them, but normally you are getting these crazy odds. But the odds can normally tell you how most of these fights are going to go. So I say that to say this: on pay-per-view cards, it's not uncommon for you to have 14 fights with 13 favorites winning. Winning. You may have a situation where we only see 1 or 2 underdogs win this week, and if Robbie Lawler is one of those underdogs and scores you 74 points in a decision win, that's not terrible. Just something to keep in mind. If you think the favorites are going to dominate and you want to get here, save some salary, 7,300, I'm not mad at you. Only thing that would make me mad at you is if you're watching the videos consistently and you're not subscribing. If you are doing that, give you some DX. That was stupid. Don't put that in the script ever again, and make sure you edit that out of the video. Our next value play is at 7,100. It's Dricus du Plessis. Yair Rodriguez at 7,000 is really interesting this week, and I talked about this a little bit on Twitter. I talked about this a little bit on KunithMMA.com. When you look at the style of fighter that Yair Rodriguez is, you look at what he's bringing to the table, it is different than anything that anyone has ever seen, including the great Alexandre Volkanovski. And when you look back on Volkanovski's run in the UFC and even pre-UFC, but let's just look at some of these title fights against guys like Makhachev and Holloway and the Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega. None of these guys have the same kind of knockout upside, a variety of attack on the feet, and just raw speed and athleticism that translates to power the way that Yair Rodriguez does. If anybody's knocking out Alexandre Volkanovski at 145 pounds, it's probably this guy right here. And seeing Volkanovski get dropped is not an uncommon thing at all. We saw Max Holloway drop him with a high kick. We saw Islam Makhachev clip him. Volk can be clipped when he's closing distance, and I think that Yair Rodriguez, I mean, even look at the Islam Makhachev fight where he's catching him with knees up the middle. Yair Rodriguez has that in his locker. I'm not saying he's going to win, but at 7,000 with what he could do, especially with where the ownership is going to be on somebody like Alexandre Volkanovski, Yair Rodriguez is by far my favorite play on the entire slate. It's a ton of value there at that price point. You get the leverage, and also if a lot of these favorites dominate and he stays alive for 5 rounds and ends up scoring, say, 40 points, even in the decision loss against Max Holloway, he scored 81 points. We just talked about how Robbie Lawler won a 5-round fight by decision and scored 78 points. This guy lost a 5-round decision and scored 81 points. So the volume is there, the output is there, and I think that even if he loses, he's still going to score you a decent amount of points, and it's hard for me to see a reason not to put Yair Rodriguez in your lineups this week. And my final value play is going to be D Gomes this week. I think that she's totally live for a knockout. I think she's going to be live for a knockout against really anybody that she fights. Like we talked about earlier in the week, if you want to go with the more polished prospect, you want to go with somebody who has a more well-rounded skill set, then you're going to go with Yasmin Jauregui. I don't see a ton of people getting here. There may be some recency bias. They'll see the recent knockout, 132 points, and maybe want to get here because she's only 6,900. I also think that the lower-priced fighters kind of scare some players off, so maybe people won't want to get here. It is women's MMA as well that typically holds down ownership, but if you wanted to get here, I'm not mad at you. I think that D Gomes is one of the more interesting value plays of the week. I don't know if she's a must play because the other fighter is so much better, but sometimes it's not about who's better, it's about who lands first or who lands harder. Keep in mind, it's not always about playing the better fighter or the best fighter, it's about playing the person who is going to score you the most points if you win. Now we can get into the cash game lineup builds for the week, and if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, comment something for the algorithm, and if you want to go a step further, you could share this with somebody who you know is going to be watching the fights this week. All free ways to support the channel. We really appreciate it. So now we can take a look at what we're going to do for cash games this week. And if you've watched the channel for a while, you know I am a believer in that you need 4 winners when it comes to your cash games. 5 winners is great, 6 winners you are cashing, but you don't need to come in first. You just need to beat half of the field. And I think 4 winners typically is going to do that for you. So how do we get to the 4 winners this week? Well, we actually have an interesting situation where we have 2 title fights on the card, both of which look like they're going to get extended, I think go the distance. So you've got Volkanovski and you've got Brandon Brandon Moreno, I'm just going to come here and grab the other side of both of those matchups. So I'll put Pantoja in, I'll put Yair Rodriguez in. That leaves us with 17,600 to spend on 2 fighters. I know exactly where we're going. We're going to live kind of in this range here, and I think what I like the most is Jesus Aguilar, because I do not believe in Shannon Ross one bit. And now you've got 9,000 to spend, so you can come up here to Vitor Petrino, you can get Nico Price, Jalin Turner, who I think is going to score a lot of points this week, Esteban Ribovics, who I think is should be a bigger favorite than he is, really. And then below that, I'm not really interested, because the Crute Menefield matchup can go either way, and then you start getting into some of these underdogs. So you realistically have about 1, 2, 3, 4 people to choose from here. And you can go right to the top of the range, grab Vitor Petrino. I'm totally fine with that. That's your cash game this week. Just to review, we're going to double stack both the main event and the co-main event, so you're guaranteed 2 winners out of this. You want Jesus Aguilar and Vitor Petrino to get it done. Those are your 4 winners. These are some of the better scoring losers on the card. This build right here is going to be pretty popular, but I do think that you can get different if you go with Petrino and say Jesus Aguilar, or if you want to come off of Petrino, you can go to somebody like Ribovics. You left 500 salary on the table. Not many people are going to do that in your cash games. Really, you're going to see a lot of people in your cash games want to play somebody like Bo Nickel, who at 9,800 to me is absolutely unplayable this week. I think that this fight last time out against Jamie Pickett, when it comes to DraftKings scoring and what this fight is going to look like this week, is best case scenario. He's not going to waste time trying to strike with this guy who's a better striker than him. He's going to take him down right away. He's probably going to submit him. A takedown is worth 5 points. A first round finish is worth 90 points. He only scored 100 points because of all this control time, because it took a long time for him to sink in that choke. I do think that Bo Nickel probably just breaks 100 points, but he's not scoring any slate breaking amount of points this week, and I think he's going to go over owned because you don't really need him. He's too expensive, and there are other spots that you can get to. Now let's take a look at what the tournament lineups are going to look like this week. I am going to show you what I think most people are going to do in your tournaments. This is what you're going to see a lot of this week. This is the quintessential sitting on the toilet before the fights start. Let me slap a lineup together, lineup from a casual fan. This is what you'll see this week. Volkanovski, Robert Whittaker, Pantoja, Menefield, Robbie Lawler, Jalin Turner. I expect Volkanovski, Whittaker, and Jalin Turner all to be pretty popular this week. Is this a bad lineup? No, I don't think it's a bad lineup, and I think that if you're playing in single entry, smaller field stuff, you can get away with this. I think that's fine. I don't love this. I don't think that this is what I would do in this situation. I think honestly you can get much better matchups and higher scoring potential if you were to go with somebody like Cameron Simon instead of Robert Whittaker or Volkanovski, and then Vitor Petrino. So just 2 small adjustments. You've spent all the salary, but this is one of those cards where you might have to, and I think this scores just as much, if not more, and much lower ownership than the combination that we just looked at. If you want to attack some first round upside across the card, you could go with somebody like Petrino because he's got that big power early. Jalin Turner's finishing everybody if he's winning. We got to come down here to somebody like Alonzo Menefield. You have to grab an underdog, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You want first round finishing upside. You want to save some salary. You might as well go D Gomes down there at 6,900. Now I've got 8,650 left over per fighter, and this puts us in a situation where there's not a whole lot of first round finishing upside that I see here on the card. I like Jesus Aguilar to get that first round finish possibly. That leaves 8,700 left over. I would just go Brandon Moreno in this situation. What he lacks in that early upside, he can make up for in volume over the 25 minutes. So I think Brandon Moreno is a very solid play this week, and you could take him out if you want. Go with somebody like Ribovics. I think that makes sense too, but I think that Brandon Moreno in this lineup probably fits the best. Now what you could do, let's say you did take out Moreno, you went with Ribovics. This opens up 200 salary. You can come off of D Gomes now. You can come down here and grab somebody like Yair Rodriguez because now you have the little bit of salary. I like this. Now, let's say you're sitting there like Kunith, but I want to play Alexander Volkanovski because I don't blame you, right? Alexander Volkanovski, 114, 133, 136, 103. Like these are Kamaru Usman numbers, if not better. So if you want to put him in there because you know he's going to work hard, score you a lot of points, that's fine with me. Put him in there. You've got 8,160 left over per fighter, so you have to get a little cheaper here, and I think we can come with somebody like Pantoja. You can grab at this point somebody like Robbie Lawler. 8,666 left over per fighter. I'm coming right back to the mid-range. I'm going to grab Ribovics. I'm going to come here to somebody like Jalin Turner. 8,700 left over. You guys know where I'm going by now. Jesus Aguilar sitting at 8,600. Left 100 salary on the table. This makes sense to me. And just to give you a look, I don't know how people are going to afford to play somebody like Bo Nickel and make it make sense. So let's say you went with Bo Nickel. let's say you came down here to Yair Rodriguez, you're going to have to grab somebody cheap as well, maybe Robbie Lawler. You can come to Alonzo Menafield, and this works. You've got 89.50 left over per fighter, and then you can obviously get some of these upper echelon plays if you wanted, say somebody like Jalin Turner, Vitor Petrino at that point. You could take Petrino out if you wanted, go with the Reaper. That makes sense. It's not a lineup I love, but it's not a lineup I hate either. It makes a lot of sense. It's just getting Robbie Lawler in there, getting Yair Rodriguez in there. It's tough to want to do that together in the same lineup, but I don't mind it. It's just going to be hard for you to want to play these guys like Nico and Maddelena and Tyra all in the same lineup. It's going to make it real tough on you. I mean, if you wanted to, and come here to D Gomes, you could grab Yair Rodriguez. And at this point, I mean, you can't play Woodburn, you can't play Harrell, you can't play Cherez, so you might as well play Mitchell. I wouldn't want to do that, but again, I've been preaching the whole time. I've been preaching for the 2 years that we've been doing this nearly that sometimes you gotta do that. Even in the DraftKings strategy guide last week, we talked about playing Alves Brenner at least in your cash games, and Uram Kutateladze is at minus 700 and gets beat up in the third round. That was pretty crazy, and you know, sometimes things like that in MMA happen. So keep your peepers peeled. Don't be afraid to play these people down here that are pretty low priced, a low win percentage, but can get it done for you because it's MMA and anything can happen. I'll give you one more look of a lineup that includes fighters that we just really haven't talked too much about. Tatsuro Taira is going to get it done. He's been scoring a lot of points in his wins as well. 103, 107, 97. He's averaging 103. You gotta love it. Yasmin Jauregui, if you wanted to go this route, I mean, she scored 129 last time out. You love that, but at the same time, I'm not dying to get there, but at the same time, not a lot of people will. So if you want to play the leverage game, go grab that up there at 9,300. I guess we could look at Cameron Simon at 9,400. That doesn't leave us with a whole lot of wiggle room. Another fighter that you can go to down here if you wanted to. I think some people are going to get here. Dricus du Plessis at 7,100. I personally hate it. I made the joke earlier in the video, but you want to go with Dricus, go with it, but I think that he's going to get torched. Jimmy Crute, why not? Just put him in there. If you think that Dan Hooker can pull a rabbit out of the hat this week, that's possible too. At this point, though, I don't have Yair Rodriguez, I don't have Pantoja, I don't have Moreno, I don't have Volkanovski, and I don't love that. So I'm going to take Simon out, and I'm going to go grab my Alexandre Volkanovski at 9,200, 8,500 left over. Just go at the top end of the range, get Ribovics, call it a day. Based on what we've went over so far, I think you can understand that I would make a lot of changes to this lineup here, but this is just a different look for you. So if you have any questions about your lineup, you can always send them to me on kunithmma.com. There's a DM function just like any other social media site that you might use. I'd be happy to take a look, help you dial up that winning lineup, and help you get those all hairs this week. I'm also going to put up a post on YouTube this week, as well as on Twitter and maybe Threads. The post is going to be a text post for Underdog Fantasy, what you should play this week. I'm going to put my can't miss slip on there. No insurance, let it ride. You're going to make the money. And also, if you want some free money, Underdog Fantasy is going to give that to you. Just use promo code Kunith. That's going to be linked in the description. A link directly that already has my promo code in there will be in the description. You'll be able to benefit from that. I will see you guys in the private contest, $1 winner take all on DraftKings. Invitation has been sent out for that. I'll send them again. That'll also be linked in the description if you want to take advantage of that. I wish you the best of luck. Feels great to be back. I appreciate the overwhelming support that we've gotten throughout the week. We're going to get back on track, get you these videos, because I know the garbage out there is weighing on you. I know it hurts. You guys come here because you want the best of the best. I know. So best of luck. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.